like with my reflection, I know it goes very deep in terms of what I did wrong and how I could be better, which is great. And it has really helped me in my career in terms of it has made me a better coach and at times a better person. But it's draining and it's hard and it makes you feel really bad.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Untapped Potential podcast with today's guest, Nicolai Morris. Nicolai is a highly regarded strength and conditioning coach from Australia and has over a decade of coaching experience in elite sport. She's previously worked with New South Wales Women's Rugby League State of Origin, New Zealand Black Sticks, track and field athletes, to name a few. And now she's currently physical performance manager for the Australian Hockeyroos. Nicolai has also done powerful work on female leadership and systemic gender bias. She is the co-founder of Women in Sport, whose mission is to invest in, support, empower, and connect women in sport for a stronger community. And this is why I wanted to have Nicolai on, because I want to dive deep into the challenges that she has faced herself and female coaches experience, and really what we can do about that. This conversation with Nicolai has been a really powerful, and I've loved it. And it just adds to the volume of episodes and the practitioners and coaches and people really who are willing to expose their true selves, their challenges and what they've done about it, and just getting underneath the titles and the roles and the sport. So I'm really excited for you to hear this, and please do send your feedback. So without delaying any further, here is this great conversation with Nicolai Morris. Welcome to today's episode, and welcome to you, Nicolai. Thank you so much for, as I said at the beginning, I really appreciate you giving your time, and I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Absolutely excited to be here and be on the podcast.
So for those listening, this is the first time we met, and our mutual friend Kelly being Kelly being put me in touch with you, and so particularly around one is what you're doing as a practitioner, but two, sort of stepping away from that, particularly with like women in sport, and yeah. So we're gonna dive into those two kind of elements. And so the first question I'm sort of leading is really just briefly, what got you into sport? Like I know you're an athlete, but what got you into coaching? What made you think I'm going to become a practitioner?
Yeah, a great question. So like many strength and conditioning coaches, I was a very committed athlete who loved training, but was probably subpar on talent. Loved it, but yeah, was never going to make a career of it. And part of that was this incessant drive to try and find a way to be better. My background predominantly was swimming growing up, swimming and running, but swimming was where my passion was at the time, and was living in Brisbane, Queensland, where majority of elite swimmers come out of Australia, and was up against many girls who ended up being Olympians and gold medalists. So it was always really tough, and I wanted to try and find any way to improve that I possibly could. And I had a friend from school tell me about this private strength and conditioning company. So when I went to school, no girls' schools had strength and conditioning facilities or practitioners working in the schools. So yeah, I reached out to this private gym and started training there. And my hero at the time, Libby Trickett, was there. So I was so excited to be training in the same gym as her. And that was my first introduction to strength and conditioning. As I finished school, I always wanted to do something in sport from a really young age. I was 11 when the Sydney Olympics were on, and that was really influential in my love of sport. And yeah, I just loved movement. I loved watching it. Even from early high school, I'd be watching on movies how people move and how they were running and why they move the way they do. And I'd be technically picking up different elements when I was swimming. So if I was doing kick, I'd be watching the other swimmers. If I was watching the Olympians, I'd be trying to work out what they were doing that could make them better, where their force leakage was or where they missed a stroke. So movement was something that I just loved, and I really enjoyed coaching and teaching. I think being an eldest child, I think the joy of telling others what to do.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
But I just really enjoyed it. And I always wanted to do some form of coaching, and started swim coaching when I was 15 or 16 and enjoyed that. But I think as I was coaching, I just didn't seem to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed swimming. It wasn't as much of, everyone's head was underwater. I couldn't talk as much, couldn't build those relationships as easily. Right. So when I finished school, I reached out to the company I had trained under and asked to intern with them, which was, just before I'd started uni. I started interning as a strength and conditioning coach, and did that for 6 months before getting my Australian strength and conditioning qualifications, and worked there casually for my entire degree, whilst doing swimming coaching and athletics and touch football coaching and whatever else you need to do to supplement, because the grind of not being a full-time coach and trying to get through uni. So during that time, I kind of decided that swim coaching probably wasn't where my heart was, and I was really liking this strength and conditioning side. And that's where I put all my energy and focus. And from then on, that was the goal. That was everything I wanted to do. And put my life into that.
Great. You said so many great things. And I guess what stood out to me, what I heard, this incessant drive to become better. That's something I've come across so much in the interviews that I've done, and the coaches that I speak to and work to. And then that was in me. And I remember the London 20 Games 2012 Olympic motto, it was GB, better never stops. And I wonder first question, how do you see what is self-growth to you? Because you've described, obviously, going through like many of us, gone through the internships and then building that experience and coming into your profession, which now you're really high up in your profession through your experience and achievements so far. And so what's self-growth to you? And I go to context, like I said at the beginning, many practitioners focus that lens on their personal development through the technical lens of whatever domain profession they're in, physiology, physiotherapy, S&C, whatever, and leave this huge blind spot. So I suppose, what's self-growth to you? How do you see it, your personal experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think and the easy answer is trying to continue learning in whatever way I can, but I think that's a bit simplified. I think for me, it's trying to find different challenges and different elements to keep finding different ways of stimulating my own brain. So an easy example of that is I took up the technical sport of pole vault a couple of years ago. Wow. And putting myself in that learner mindset, I think both makes me a better coach and a better human, and trying something that I've never done before that inevitably I'm going to be fairly average at and am. But having something that I can't grind through, I can't rely on things I've done in the past. It's completely different, has really helped my thought process and my development and how I approach learning. And I try and do something like that. So I've done it before with some gymnastics, adult gymnastics, and learning different skills there. And trying to put myself where I can outside of my comfort zone and do something that's different. I think I like doing different things rather than the conventional, because that just seems to be what excites me and makes me motivated to keep going. And I think at the start of my career, like most coaches, we get very bogged down in learning lots of technical, and it's still something I think I have a bit of a imposter syndrome around. I have been told many times that I'm very technically good, but I still think it's somewhere that I'm weaker than others. I wasn't the most brilliant student. I was okay. I was always average-ish, but to get average, I had to work, and it's still kind of in my brain that it's not something, I'm not that smart, I'm not strong at it. So it feels like at times I've at the start worked really hard on the technical, but sometimes we'll go away and go into more the soft skills and the leadership books, because I feel like I could understand that a little easier than some of the hard sciences. And I think, that's probably helped me in later years. But I think at the start we just get focused too hard on just continuing to learn more, do another course, and that's all well and good. You need to learn your technical skills, but commonly, and same with doing too much PD, at the end of the day, if you overdo that, one, you burn yourself out on knowledge. You don't want to take any more in, but you also have no ability to implement any of it. You're just taking knowledge in, and it's just, you're not doing anything about it. So that was something I learned when I was a bit younger.
You said so many great things, and for those of you listening that are practitioners, like what stood out to me, and it'd be interesting to if you reflect on yourself, what you've described already in a short time. You've said about your drive, but a coach is like teaching. Your heart led, like you followed where your heart was. You weren't in swimming anymore. You knew your heart wasn't there, so you moved, you changed. You're looking at things like communication and leadership, and you're spending time outside of work. Yes, I know it's a sport, but you're learning a skill for yourself. And one key thing that stood out to me is something you can't grind out. And I say that and bring that up because where I used to grind in. I thought, one, I used to grind at work, but two, I used to grind my training. So I thought I was fit and strong and blah, blah, blah. And I put myself in it. I literally broke myself. Like nothing I didn't tell you. Like I had an autoimmune condition. So told in 2017, I had half my thyroid removed and told I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. And a side note, and this, maybe I'll address it in another episode, but I've healed that completely. And so my point is, like, those of you, like, in a way, I was numbing. I was using my training to numb, just beat myself into the ground. And so that's what stood out to me. Something you can't grind. Like I'm learning skateboarding at the moment. And so different sport, but kind of, anyway, how you're in a leadership position now, performance manager of the Hockeyroos. I forget how you pronounce it. But what stands out to you? I mean, maybe from your perspective, like, you have touched on it, but maybe elaborate on it, like that human part to you, what makes you really good at what you do. And of course, I've never seen you work in any context, but you just see your track record of your career and what you've already spoken about now. What shines through to me about you is the human part. You allow that out, and how you integrate with other people, but yourself, feelings, sense, communication, connection. They're the things that kind of seem to pop out at me already from our conversation. So like maybe elaborate on big question maybe, but like, what do they mean to you, and how do you nurture that? I mean, you've touched on it already in yourself, but also in the people you lead or the department you lead.
So this is quite an interesting one, and it's something I've reflected on a lot in the last couple of years. I think it's quite interesting. I naturally have quite high empathy, and that is something that I think is really important, especially in the, I guess, new age of coaching. It's a really important one, and I've seen the benefits of that with a lot of athletes I've coached. And I feel my philosophy is developing people through performance. And I did a Q&A the other week, and I had one of the students ask me, like, great philosophy, but what does that actually mean? Like, how do you put that into practice? And for me, that is trying to the best of my ability to get to know the person and not expect that they're a robot and expect that they just do everything that we tell them and there's no life outside of sport and that's just go, go, go. I had, this is probably one of the moments that has stood out. One of like those really nice hearted moments that will stand out in your coaching. And it's when I was working in New Zealand and I had 3 of my athletes were moving house and we were in a pretty heavy training block and we were doing all the usual monitoring and they were hugely stressed. Their wellness was really low. Their resting heart rate was massively starting, like there was a trend, it was increasing. And they were physically, you could see they were under a lot of strain. And I had a conversation with them. I was like, just checking how they were going. And we had gym the next day and it was important. Every session is important. But I asked them, I was like, if I take gym out, if you just sleep in and do your house moving and let that all settle, will that help? Is that something we can work with? And it was something that was really, they were just so over the moon that someone would even think of that and care about them outside of being an athlete. And one of them, when I left, we had a really lovely phone call. I think both of us were blubbering by the end. But the thing she said, she was like, the thing that stood out most and one of the best memories of our time together was the fact that when you did that, it wasn't just because you let us miss a gym. It was you cared about me as a person more than an athlete. And I think that's the first time I've really felt that.
Right.
Which is pretty hard to hear that that's never happened before.
Yeah.
So that's really important to me. I've had times in recent roles where being a younger female, I'm not actually that young. I just look younger than I am, which doesn't always help things. But being a younger practitioner at times, I've been told if you're working with athletes similar-ish age, a little bit younger, you don't want to be friends with your athletes, or you don't want to seem that way. And I've tried doing it that way, and it's been really detrimental to both my style of coaching, my mental health, my way of doing things, and the relationship between myself and the athletes. When I've done it, I guess, in my natural style, I have athletes that I will be friends for life. I've been to a few athletes' weddings. I have athletes I talk to that I worked with 10 plus years ago. That's the relationship I want to build. If it seems like friends, it's still, there is still, I guess, a boundary if you need a boundary. And I don't really use it as a boundary. It's more if I need them to do something from a strength and conditioning point of view, i.e. if they need to run, if I tell them they need to do X, Y, Z, the coaches typically are scared that they won't because of that friendship. And I find that if you've got that relationship with the athlete, they'll do anything for you. They'll run through walls. It's not you can't have a strong relationship in that way with an athlete. I don't think it's an either or situation. So yeah, it's something that I've learned that I can't avoid my natural style. It doesn't work for me. And yeah, making those relationships with the athlete tends to be, some of the most positive aspects of my career.
Powerful. Again, what stands out to me is trust. So trust, obviously, the athlete, like they're responsible, like trusting them, they want to be the best they can be, but that session wasn't going to help them be that. And also understanding emotions and whether that's intuitively, or whether that's because you did some research. Like my understanding of, I disregard, much of my career, I disregarded in S&C, I disregarded emotions. I didn't think about them. Well, you just do this and do that. Right? And that was detriment to me. What I've come to realize, and this is hopefully probably another episode with someone more in the scientific realm to understand, explain this, but how emotions have such a massive, like you can't separate thinking, like feeling and thinking, emotions from the body. You just can't do it. And how, that's just what stood out to me, like you're trusting the athletes. And one, you've described that connection and that's such, belonging, the sense of belonging in that team with the athletes. How have you, one as a female, assuming that coaches, if they're a male coach, but even if they're a female coach, how do you turn that inwards on the department, whether you're either from where you are now, leadership position, or whether when you were kind of, obviously maybe a practitioner, less experienced at the time, because what you've described as being authentic, being coaching in your style. Yes, you've got the technical elements, but you're applying that in your way, in Nicolai's way. And I hear many, and this was kind of true for me as well. For some of my career, I trying to fit into a certain mold of how I thought I should be, rather than delivering it in a way that I knew worked for me. How did you navigate that? Or what conversations were you having? Because this is affecting a lot of men. Obviously, I've spoken to a lot of men as well, trying to be a person that they're not, deliver in a way that they're not, because whoever is leading is still in that old school mentality of top down.
So I think that's such a challenge. This is one of the things I think being a female in S&C has actually been helpful at times. Men are meant to be this macho dictating leader, be a man's man. That's the idea that is perpetuated in sport often. It's terrible and it's wrong and it's not fair on guys. It doesn't allow as much authenticity, and it breeds a certain style of coach and person and environment. That's one of the strengths, to be honest, of having been a woman in S&C. I can't be a guy, just can't. So I haven't been able to coach like that. There are elements of having to assimilate and be part of the culture of clubs, but there's no way I'm 5'3", 5'4". I'm a small human. I'm not going to be a big guy who instantly, as I walk in the room, people listen and take respect just because I'm a big dude. It's just never going to work like that, unfortunately. Joy of being tiny. But I think it's definitely something I've dealt with for coaches and different environments. There's been some unbelievable environments that I've been part of that have been so open to the different and open to the change. I've had, one of my earlier jobs working in first grade rugby in Brisbane. I worked with a fantastic team, and the coach that brought me into that team had been an assistant in teams I had worked with previously, and he took a bit of a punt on me and was unbelievable, allowed me to coach in a different way. This team was predominantly Pacific Islander, and really allowed me to get to that relationship side of things. It was such a joy to be a part of that team, and it was really family orientated, and it wasn't your typical rugby environment. And I think it really allowed me to thrive in that. Whereas I've been
can I just pause you on that one? So what you're describing, again, a really powerful, again, positive, or Ben Young, someone I interviewed a couple of episodes ago, he's called it his North Star environment that he always tries to match in all the different environments he goes to. Kind of sounds like,
I love that.
Dive into that a little bit more. Like, what were the key? So how did you feel safe to be who you were? Like, was someone modeling it themselves? Was the lead modeling themselves? Or like, because my point in saying that is, the idea of self-preservation. I've mentioned it most ever as episode, but so many environments have this self-preservation of practitioners in it who are hiding for various reasons, whether it's fear of reprisal, looking weak, competition between roles within a department. This is all within the department, which is kind of perpetuating this closed, inefficient environment. So yeah, what are the kind of qualities that allowed you to flourish and really release your untapped potential, for your full potential as a practitioner?
Great question. I really love the North Star approach, and that's definitely something that you look for. Once you've had a really good environment, that's what you're constantly trying to find again and trying to find where you fit. I feel like I'm someone who doesn't always naturally fit into roles, not just because I'm female, it's just been part of life for me. And
me too.
That environment, I think, and the ones that I've been able to thrive and have been those North Star kind of environments, has been ones where it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be authentic, and it's not trying to be cool, not trying to be fake, not trying to have too much ego. It's just about trying to grow and being okay to discuss robust conversations or having safe conflict and being able to try and find the best way forward. And that club, it was just so accepting. There was every person just wanted to be there. We had so much fun, and we're a team. It kind of felt, it really did feel like one of those movies. It felt like a bunch of misfits thrown together. Not that any of them were really misfits. They're all great people, but it just felt like that. The team had done quite poorly the year before. We were never meant to do well. We struggled at the start of the season, and we ended up winning the comp, which you would have made a lot of money. No one was betting on us. But it was, we'd all go after we'd added on trainings towards the finals to get a bit more improvement, captain's run style, and we'd all choose to go to breakfast after, and all the staff, all the athletes would go, and there was no hierarchy. The coach wasn't better than the athlete wasn't better than the support staff. Everyone was on equal footing, and everyone was heard and valued, which I think is probably the key. Those hierarchical and everyone being heard, I think, is probably the best aspects of those type of roles.
Again, it's great you finish with that bit, because I've heard time and again how leads will say to practitioners, like, "Oh, don't say that to the manager. They don't like that. Don't say this. Don't say that." Like micromanaging, and for whatever reason, whether it's their own fear of feeling they should. Well, I'm speculating, of course, but one of the things you said, like, and again, it's so potent because so many environments struggle with this. Like, how, you're on a level. You're talking about. You described your friends. There's friendship there and connection. What were one or two things that stood out to you then? How did you guys in that environment navigate the inevitable disagreements? That's again, Ben Young would describe it as, one, don't take it personally because it's for a greater cause. It's like, well, this is for a bigger thing here. It's not between you and me. It's okay. Let's work this out. And so, how did you guys, whatever comes to mind about how you guys worked with conflict or worked with disagreement? Anything that comes to your mind.
This is stretching my memory, Tad. It was quite a while ago now.
Don't worry. or now, whatever, if anything comes to your mind.
I think like I said before, I'm someone, I like being able to have all the thoughts on the table, try and work out the best one. And I've been in environments that really grapple with that, and it doesn't fit, it doesn't work, it's seen as aggressive. Whereas I've gone into environments and worked with staff who it's been totally normalized, totally encouraged.
Right.
And in those encouraged environments, it's okay to disagree. Like, it's not a personal attack if I don't believe the same thing you do. It's actually a benefit because we're going to see from different viewpoints. We're going to get the best outcome. And I think, I worked with a physio last year that we did this really well. We had some really big discussions. I probably pushed a little bit more than he did at times, but we both pushed on what we believed. And every time at the end of the discussion, even if I didn't necessarily agree at the start, by the end, we were like, no, that's going to be the best way forward for the athlete. That's going to give the best outcomes. That's what we want. Whereas I find when I can't get that clarity of thought and that collaboration, that I personally struggle. I'm not my best self. Frustrated, and it can be a challenge for everyone in the working environment. It doesn't work well. I feel like those kind of conversations are the ones that help me thrive as well.
Yeah, great. Really, again, those that are listening, to really encourage you, invite you to really think about this. How does that show up in your environment? Again, of course, this is not everyone, but I hear this so much. I hear so much how the team, the department, whatever it is, medical or performance or any whatever department is, are limiting themselves because there's in this dissonance or this stickiness, incoherence within the department, and kind of how do you start to detangle that? And I think the things you described are powerful steps to take. And
I get it wrong a lot, though. I get it 100%. I am definitely, I've probably messed it up more than I've got it right over the length of my career, and will continue to, unfortunately. But
that's the thing. You're not afraid to. You're not afraid, and I think that's courage. In what it sounds like to me, anyway. There's courage within you. Like you're what's the word I'm trying to use? You're at peace with yourself enough to be able to make mistakes because you see it as a process rather than I can't make a mistake. I've got to look like I know whatever the answer is. I've got to, oh God, I'm in a senior position. And I should know it all. I should have it all together. Like that's true leadership to me. And leadership's such a cliche, isn't it? But I think it's just you're modeling that bravery, that courage.
It's quite funny because anyone who knows me will absolutely say I'm an A-type perfectionist. It's that double-edged sword, but it's something. I've had some really good mentors that have helped me with that, and I think part of it is sometimes a saying before thinking, but it's definitely, I don't want to leave something that should be said unsaid at times. I'd rather be the what's the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And I feel like I've naturally been encouraged by my mum was very good at this and very outspoken at times, but I think her courage and her way of being definitely rubbed off onto me, rightly or wrongly. She probably did it with a bit more grace, I think.
It sounds like you're doing it really well. And you touched on mentor. Like what? I know Chris Spinks, which I'm going to reach out to, and hopefully you have on here.
Yes.
What does a mentor give you? What kind of, just briefly, what? And I say this because I don't think enough of us do get mentors. But or have had mentors. What does a mentor give you?
Yeah, so I think I didn't really have a specific mentor when I started out. I had people I trusted and people I had conversations with, but it wasn't what I would deem a typical mentor-mentee relationship, and it wasn't consistent. It was more some of the people I worked with had conversations at times, or lecturers or tutors at uni. And it's quite funny. It wasn't even something that I was really aware when I started out that people did or was recommending. And I was really lucky. So when I was working in Sydney, we had a professional development. My boss had organised out at the New South Wales Institute of Sport, and Chris Spinks was presenting. To be honest, I cannot remember a thing that he presented on. I don't even remember the topic. I just remember I really liked his style.
Yeah.
It was also a job I was like, oh, I want to work here. So how can I meet some people and learn what this is all about? Mm-hmm. And I am persistent to a fault. I don't really know when to stop. One of my best mates will tell you my boundaries are challenging. People need to set boundaries for me. Right. But I messaged him and asked him if I could come watch a couple of sessions, which I did, and enjoyed talking to him. And I think we had sat down a couple of times to discuss different elements, just general stuff. And I remember he was the one, I think maybe we talked about mentorship, but he was the one who really, I guess, put it into real terms. He was like, do you want me to be your mentor? This is the stuff we will be this is kind of the guideline. You're going to have to lead it, and gave me some real good guidelines around what it means to be a mentee and what I would need to bring, rather than just expecting someone to answer all my questions and do the work for me, right? Which wasn't really what I was doing, but just it was really nice to get that formalized. And for me, it was never the technical stuff. I always naturally cue and see movement quite well. I was never so concerned about my ability to do that. It was more around my shortcomings and my knowledge and wanting to know more around leadership and conflict and dealing with people and things like job interviews and burnouts and all of the broader stuff that we deal with. And he was, and even though technically we aren't technically in a mentor-mentee relationship, I don't think he's ever getting rid of me on that case, and still will be one of the first people I ask for anything, even though he's no longer a strength and conditioning coach. He's just someone who is fantastic at that, and is really beneficial for my own development, rather than the typical. I feel a lot of people reach out to get mentored without really wanting to be mentored. They want someone just to either complain to, or to do their work for them, or to get the X's and O's, rather than really delving into deep reflection. Like I got homework, I did a lot of work on reflecting and had to really dig deep, and still do, which I think has been a real strength and has made me such a better person from what he's taught me.
Great. Again, so many things. And you touched on burnout, boundaries, deep reflection, in my experience, it can be really painful sometimes. And
so painful.
Because you're getting the mirror back of like, oh, this is me, or how I am at the moment. So could go into that a little bit more. And I say this because practitioners who are listening, encouraging to if you've never done this type of deep reflective work. I was forced into it by grief, kicking and screaming. But I'm so grateful. I've gone into that journey, and I'm still am on that journey. So reveal anything as much as you want to, but what is one thing or a couple of things that you've learned about yourself, you, Nicolai, the woman, that has opened your life up a little bit more? And I think I gave you the example at the start of me. one, I didn't see I had such a low self-worth of myself, which manifested in how I was operating in life, which drove me into a hole of physical and emotional breakdown. But two, like, I was always complaining about the external world, never taking responsibility myself in both profession and also my personal relationships, intimate relationships. And it was that moment of realization, like, oh, I'm the fixed here. And so that's what kind of an example from me that was. So yeah, anything that to offer people who are listening, like, oh, right, that's that's deep reflection. I want to briefly interrupt today's episode and draw your attention to that deep reflection. How often do you do that deep reflection yourself? What processes do you use? Have you got any mentors that we've been talking about? Do you have a mentor that allows you and helps you guide yourself within yourself? Because if not, I want to draw your attention to the Practitioner Needs Analysis Coaching Program. The conversations in my research have shown clearly that 160 highly successful practitioners supporting some of the world's greatest athletes have on one level achieved a great deal within high performance sports and academia. Yet on a much more personal level, many are quietly suffering to maintain the perception of being successful and happy. And this is the inconvenient truth sitting just under the surface within our high performance environments. The cost of this truth ranges from divorce, absent parent, physical and mental illness, all of which contribute to limiting the performance impact we all strive so hard to achieve. The human element has been forgotten, with many top practitioners now finding ways to leave our beloved industry. My research process has spawned the services I now provide to support performance practitioners. Athletes have a vast array of options within a support network to help them thrive, optimize, and activate their full expression. But very little is currently aimed at offering this unique support to performance practitioners. And this is where the Practitioner Needs Analysis Coaching Program fills that gap. The Practitioner Needs Analysis allows you to identify what qualities are most important for you to show up in your role, career, and life in your fullest expression. It provides an analysis that highlights the components of your life, giving you clarity on what is blocking you, how it's blocking you, and what you need to do to release those blocks. This guides you to tailor your goals and actions away from potential burnout, divorce, or illness, and instead towards one where you thrive as a practitioner and in your personal life. To find out more about the group and one-to-one options Men Behind Sport offers, visit www.menbehindsport.com or email me directly at richard@menbehindsport.com. Now back to this great conversation with Nicolai.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I've shared some reflections with managers and things in the past, and I think I must not come across as someone who does a lot of reflection. So this year's been a quite a challenging year, but a really good year in terms of self-understanding and reflection. So I have been recently officially diagnosed with ADHD. Social media has been very helpful into sharing what female ADHD actually looks like.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been quite self-aware. I know I can feel the vibe of things. I know what I'm doing, but I can't always necessarily stop it or self-manage,
Right.
or manage how the conversation or something is going. I can feel it, but I can't necessarily do things about it. And there's been a lot, like in my career, my natural ADHD, I guess, challenges is I can be reactive, and I don't realize the tone that comes across as. To me, it's just like, yep, just saying it, and it needs to get out of my brain. But the impact that has on others and their feelings towards me and how they take the message is very different to how I intend. So that's been a real big learning. And then also, oh gosh, now I'm blanking on the other key one.
No worries.
It'll come. But yeah, the self-reflection and understanding myself through this process this year brings up a lot of challenges, because you've got the side of you that goes, yeah, I wish someone had told me this and helped me with this when I was younger. I could have saved relationships. I could have been such a better person or more normal or whatever you want to call it. And you fight between, I guess, the two sides of your brain. One that is so critical and with my reflection, I know it goes very deep in terms of what I did wrong and how I could be better, which is great. And it has really helped me in my career in terms of it has made me a better coach and at times a better person. But it's draining and it's hard and it makes you feel really bad versus then you flip and you go, no, I'm actually not that bad. And you just flick between the two a bit like a different switch of, okay, I need to work on myself and there are elements that I need to be better at and I want to be better at. And then you go too hard and you're like, no, but I'm also still a good person. I'm still good at these things. And you kind of grapple with that. And that's something that has been, a real deep reflection and trying to work out how that sits in the world where typically it's not fully set up for people who aren't neurotypical and learn in a different way and act in a different way. And I'm not saying it's been traumatically bad in terms of I'm quite a mild case, but there are definitely elements, impulsivity and reactivity that come out. And I've always had that as a criticism of me as a person, both in work and life, and tried so hard to change it. But
an internal criticism or a criticism from others?
Yeah. Others. And also myself. Right. But yeah, I've had that throughout from childhood on. And I'd never really worked out what I could do and how to change that, or if it needed to change, or what helped and what didn't. And finally learning with the diagnosis has been a really big one in understanding that that's actually also part of it. It's not necessarily my fault, which is a cool thing as well, but it still doesn't mean it's good at times. It's still not the best way to act in different situations. But understanding that, acknowledging that. Spinksy is great for acknowledging but not judging. So trying to get in that mindset. I think I judge myself too harshly quite often, but understanding it, but also working out how to manage it when it's something that isn't very easily managed is, something that I'm going to continue working on, and it is going to be a difficult one. But will be forever something that I want to do better.
I think, thank you for sharing that. And I can't speak from the experience of ADHD. I can only speak from my experience but I think what you're describing is, I think true self-growth, personal development is a lifelong journey. There's never a destination. Yeah. It's a constant, which, as you said, can be really tiring at times and profound at times. And what you described, it sounds like to me anyway, and how I relate it to me, is acceptance of who you are, where you've come from. Just acceptance in the moment, because that judgment, again, I recognize that in myself, and I've heard that a great deal, kind of judgment of ourselves, that drive. I come back to the motto of the London 2012 Olympic Games, better never stops. And at the time, I completely bought into that. And now I look at that like, wow, I question that now deeply. I'm not in the performance world anymore. And I, so I'm coming from a personal point of view, but I think there's got to be space for acceptance. There has to be space for acceptance. And to me, then it comes into the human experience. Like, we're so much more than roles and the sports and everything we're involved in. We're a human being, and which, again, for me, only me and my experience crosses into a spiritual dimension of what is going on here. And I think this journey of life is just a journey, and that part of acceptance is crucial for us to nurture, in my experience anyway.
No, totally. And I think it's really hard because in strength and conditioning, you have to work so hard just to get a job, and then you've done all these unpaid hours and you've been taught nonstop just to keep going, just to keep working. Like even now, like, oh, do I need to take on another role even though I'm in a full-time? You don't know how to stop. And it's not being able to actually sit with yourself, and you don't really have time to be you because you're so worried about everyone else and constantly trying to fit with the team and the coaches and do what their needs. You never really look after your own and really acknowledge what makes you a person, not a coach, nothing to do with your role, which, I think is a challenge for most of us in the industry, or those who have been in the industry as well.
Massively. And I think, to me, this is where I think the future is now, maybe, like that's where performance departments or practitioners, that's where it's evolving into. That's where I see it evolving into, and that's where I'd like to that's the area I'm interested in, the person and the evolution of the person, which happens to be a practitioner, which happens to work in an Olympic sport, which whatever. And I think maybe it segues kind of really nicely, actually. You say we're always focused, as practitioners, we're always focused at, maybe the head coaches and the athletes, of course. There's not really anyone looking at us. Like, is that where women in sport came from? Kind of maybe touch on that a little bit, like, because there's obviously UK coaching in England. My mind is going blank, but there's very few support structures there for practitioners. Now, Cody Royal was kind of, I guess, a very well-known one, working with a head coach level. But in terms of practitioners below, like, there doesn't seem to be very much at the moment, and from where I sit anyway. So maybe dive in. Is that where women in sport came from, or what? That was the roots that you three of you sort of came from?
Yeah, we came together just trying to build a place where initially it was women in strength and conditioning. It kind of evolved into women in sport. We probably need to do a bit more work on the community. It gets pushed to the back burner at times, but it was evolving into a space where we could have a little community and feel safe. The other one, which I'm also involved with, is the Women's Advisory Committee as part of the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. And like we have a breakfast at the conference every year, and it's the highlight for me every year. And I know a lot of the other attendees, it's the same thing. It's this space that you don't have to be anyone. You don't have to try and fit in. You don't have to do anything different. It's, let's be okay and be vulnerable and share our experiences. And that's, where women's sport kind of came from, is, okay, guys typically have a little bit more of a natural network, a little bit more of a natural group that they find. And I mean, the first conference I went to, I reckon maybe 20 females out of 300 plus attendees. The only good thing about it was there's never a line in the bathroom. Only place in the world you don't for females. Love that. But it's the only thing I'm sad to give up. No, they're definitely worthwhile giving up. But it was, I was lucky. I had a couple of females I knew when I was really young. So when I was training myself and when I started out, that worked in the private company. So I did actually not necessarily see of it as just a male industry. And then I had a female swimming coach as well, who was one of the few in many, many years to make the Australian team. So I had these females in positions, and I had gone to an all-girls school. So you kind of get drilled and you can do everything, and you don't really see that. And being a swimmer, the sport is gender equal. Like, there is no difference between you being a male swimmer and a female swimmer. So I probably wasn't so aware of these issues other than the gender sociocultural stuff you learn at school that we did. So when I moved more into football codes, when I spent a little longer in the industry and saw what it was realistically like, it was just a bit of a shock. And I know that there are a lot of women coming into the industry who don't necessarily know anyone or any females, and just finding somewhere that they can ask questions, finding somewhere that's safe, that they can come to, was really helpful. And I think one of the things we did through COVID, which again would love to bring back, I really need more hours in a day, but we had just little Zoom catch ups, and it wasn't like every other Zoom that seemed to be really, really PD focused. We had a couple that were helpful, like around different elements, but it was more of a time where people could come, and it wasn't just women, but it was predominantly where they would come online, don't have to be strength and conditioning, just anyone join, sent a link out to anyone interested. And it would be like, okay, how's everyone going? What's going well for you? What's not? Okay, has anyone else had similar issues? What's worked for you? What hasn't? And it was like a little brainstorm, really nice organic group that formed. And I know there are people who are still really good mates that met through that, and are still really close today, which is really special. And it was just, it's just something that allows everyone to voice their challenges and fears, that maybe they're not confident because at times maybe they're seen as, well, you can't have these challenges because as a female strength and conditioning coach, you need to be so much better than everyone else because otherwise you're never going to get the job. And kind of that narrative that both we think and kind of does at times get perpetuated by the industry.
I've heard.
So
just on that, like not someone in sport, but a friend of my wife and ours. She's very high up in the tech world, and she got to a very senior position and felt that pressure to have to do more than the male counterparts, which led to her massive burnout. And like again, you're talking about stories. You also said about earlier, like the idea that the men perceive they need to be a certain way. And so one area I love going into, coach, I work on the idea of stories. And so whether it's a cultural story or cultural myth, whatever you call it, the idea, well, this is a story I'm living to. Is that true for me? What would I be if I kind of let go of that story and created my own narrative about how I think this should be? And you've brought that up a few times, and I just want to highlight that for the listeners, if just in case you haven't picked up on it, like the idea they're just stories. They're just stories. You can be any way you want to be. You just have the courage to step into who you truly are.
Yeah, no, really, really good point. And I know it's something that the squad I'm working with currently, it's a real focus on their performance as well as, okay, what story are you telling yourself?
Right.
I think I'm very good at telling myself stories at times. So it's a really, really important one to reflect on and ask yourself when you're in that narrative.
Yeah, massively. It's a work in progress. So last three questions. What do you think then? And this could be a massive one, but kind of where you see it, what do you think where do you think sport, and of course sport can be broken down to different cultures of sports, so there's different cultures within different sports. What would you like to see change within performance sport from a practitioner point of view, from the performance departments, kind of like the culture? What do you think you'd like to see change? What needs to change from your perspective?
I think the key is hierarchy. There's a whole bunch of research that also shows this, and lots of case studies. Reading Culture Code, which is a great book and goes through this as well. I think having a hierarchy that isn't, I guess, at times taken down. There's going to be some at different times, but having people more important than others typically allows for a lack of confident decision-making, a lack of people speaking up, a lack of vulnerability and openness to different ideas. And it doesn't matter who's giving the ideas. It doesn't matter if everyone's working towards the same goals, which typically in a team, the goal is the championship, the gold medal, whatever. It shouldn't matter who's saying it, and it should be really open. Another great book, Black Box Thinking.
Yes.
But it's so good.
Yeah, great book. I was going to mention that.
And it's fantastic, but it really dives deep into that ability to not have a hierarchy and how detrimental it can be. So it's one that is really hard to break in and out of as support staff, because we are there to support. And at times that means that you're doing the longest hours, the grunt work, and not being appreciated. And I think probably at the start of my career and at different times, you're like, yeah, that's fine. Just keep grinding, keep doing it. And it's not actually okay. You're literally like the amount of friends, family, different occasions that I've missed over the years because the job has been number one and I wanted to be successful and I want to do these things. And I don't necessarily regret all the decisions because I'm in a really lucky space and I'm really happy with what I've been able to do with my career. But every person deserves to feel acknowledged and respected for the work that they put in. And sometimes it's really easy to go, yeah, athletes are selfish. And that's a big generalization and not really fair or giving athletes credit. But athletes are selfish. They need to only focus on themselves. But like one of the athletes I've worked with the longest, her name is Nicolai. She was Nicola McDermott, and Nick's equal number one in the world in high jump. She is one of the most unbelievable athletes, definitely the most unbelievable athlete I've ever worked with and seen. She is just at another level, but she's just such an amazing person. You write a program for her and it's, oh my God, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This is going to fit in so well. And I'm not saying people should get credit for doing their job necessarily and every little thing, but the joy she puts into it and the respect she pays for every person who works in her team. And again, just those little things. I'd go to the end of the earth to help her. I'd do anything. I'm so invested in her doing well. I would like nothing better than to see her perform the best she can, because and same, Matt, her coach, so helpful, so thankful. And this same with the rest of the team. It's such an environment that allows us to be our best because we're all so grateful for each other, and it's said and it's open. And again, there's no real hierarchy. Right. We all have different elements that we input, but it's not one is better than the other. Nick's at the center of it. We all want her doing better, but it doesn't mean that someone's voice doesn't matter because of X, Y, Z. So long roundabout way of saying it, but I think that's really important, is that hierarchy and being acknowledged and respected for what we do. And that's not just, I guess, other people thanking SMCs, but it's us as SMCs being aware of others. There's I listened to a podcast relatively recently on the coach of the Collingwood AFL club, Craig McRae, and they I think it was every week, every month, something like that. They bring like all the staff in and the athletes say who they're grateful for. The staff do the same. And it's really about celebrating and acknowledging all those little things that different people, from the person shining the boots to the person who is the key player. So that kind of thing, I think, really breaks down those walls and is really beneficial.
Powerful. Kind of touched on giving it all. And so the next question, second to last question, what is sacrifice to you then? And so give you context. So I can fully appreciate sacrifice around training camps and around major competitions, for example, certain periods of the season. That's kind of, I guess, part of sport. And, even the games you typically play the weekends, and, there are elements of you describe about missing family events, for example, versus sacrifice, the 24/7 mentality, first in, last out, week in, week out, of every week of the season. There's a 4-week off season, then you back at it. And that extends to 5, 10, 15 years. And in some cases, extreme cases, I've heard coaches, questioning, well, have I sacrificed the opportunity to have children because I've done this? Have I sacrificed my marriage because I've been so blind to what was happening outside of work? So my point of question, back to the question, what is sacrifice? So this is obviously a moving target. Like, what are you prepared to sacrifice, and when do you bring yourself back? When do you think, actually, wait, I've gone too far this way, I need to come back?
Something I really struggle with, the boundaries. That's the boundaries for myself. Even my current manager has pulled me up, myself and the coach, a few times on, like, no, you've already been here like 10 hours, go home. Oh, no, go home, get out of here. Why are you responding to messages on the weekend? Or
right.
You get told these things, and don't get me wrong, I totally agree with them. But then if you don't do them, it's also then a problem. So if you don't get your work done, even if you're doing the work of multiple people, which a lot of the time in Olympic sport you're doing an entire department's worth of work. And again, this is where being a perfectionist is a real problem for me, because I don't have the ability to stop myself from wanting to do it better. And it's something I'm getting better at learning about myself and learning, no, back off. But it'll be like, no, this really little thing realistically probably makes almost no impact, but it'll make a big difference. And now I've just done an extra 5 hours of work on top of the multitude I've above what I should be doing anyway. And I feel it kind of gets built into your psyche when you're starting out. Yeah. And when you're actually in those full-time roles, it's still there. It just doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. Whether or not where you're working encourages it or not. And yeah, I find it really, really hard to break out of, and to get out of that mindset, because that's been my goal. It's the same thing as an athlete trying to succeed. This is it. This is all I can see, and you've got the blinders on, and that's it. And that's not it. Life is not just work. And I'm finally slowly getting into true understanding, and also actions with the understanding now. And it's working out how much is too much. And for me this year, a great way for me is, okay, on the weekend, no, I may do a few extra hours during the week, but on the weekend I'm not touching work.
Right.
I'm not doing a thing. But then it's also, I may not be physically doing programming or whatever else, but if I get 10 messages from athletes, I don't yet have the ability. I hate notifications. That's part of it. I just hate having them, and I really should just absolutely turn them off my phone. But then if something's really important, so it's that flip side, and realistically, it's not going to be that important, and I should just turn them off. But yeah, I have a real struggle not being able to respond to that. But then that gets me frustrated that I'm doing things that I shouldn't necessarily be doing, even though I've chosen it. Yeah. And then that can lead to more burnout, because you're just getting that negative headspace of, why am I doing all this extra?
Yes.
But you've also put yourself in that
Yes.
spot, and it is a choice. But then it cycles even worse because you're like, you did this to you. You've got no one to blame but yourself. So it's a hard one to break.
I call
It
it
really is.
the windows to the world. And what I mean by that is, so you can't control who contacts us, but I can control my notifications, or like, and so like I know I'm in a very different position. I'm not in sport, but like I won't turn my notifications on until I'm ready to answer. So because otherwise it's just in my head and I can't be present. Not all of them, of course, but every now and again there'll be a message like it gets me stewing. I'm thinking about it, and then I can't. I'm not present with my daughter. I'm not present with my wife, and so I'm in control of my windows to the world. I'm going to shut them down right now, and I'll come back to them. And that's been powerful, potent for me. And
it's a good way of thinking, and I think a lot of coaches I've known who have had families, that's kind of been the, I guess, catalyst for some of the change. And I think that's actually a real problem with our industry, that's the only reason we can get out of this cycle. And again, absolutely sticking my hand up is probably one of the worst at this, but I fully acknowledge it's a real problem, and we need to work on ways of sport accepting that you should be able to live and not dedicate every single moment of your life to your role, which typically is not paid well enough to do that in the first place. And then whether or not that means hiring more people or just understanding that the expectations are different, but it's a systemic thing. It's head coaches are the same. How do we change entire systems to understand this? How many people need to leave systems and have burnout, have mental health issues to let this be a change, and realize that just because it's sport, and sport is fantastic and it leads great things and it makes great changes, but it also can be a real problem, and there is definitely a dark side of working in sport. It seems really great from the outset, from everyone, all your friends and family. Must be so much fun. You're like, yep. But 24/7 is realistic for a lot of us, and it's not sustainable. And that's why so many S&Cs through COVID, heaps dropped into out of S&C completely or into private. You're still seeing it now. It's a really young profession, and there are people going, well, one, they're either not able to get roles because they're older, which is completely crap, to be honest. And then the other flip side is people aren't making it through their career because either they're completely burnt out or it's physically not sustainable.
There's a
not okay.
Exactly. There's a rites of passage that from all the conversations that I just mapped out, this rites of passage that I certainly went through, and it kind of gets to the point where decisions have to be made. You're the student, you're the yes person, man or woman, and you go into it, and then you start to get some success and promotion and high level athletes, whatever. And then it's just this rites of passage, and all of a sudden it gets to this decision like, life can't be sustained like this anymore. I need to make a change. And I'll put it below in the resources, like if anyone interested, they can check it out. And I guess what you described, you said about friends and family, social networks, thinking, oh, wow, you do this. Oh, you must be amazing. Like that in itself is a stickiness, because it's this, oh, you're really cool. You've got this shiny job over there.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's just a job. And Carly McCulloch, I'll point you guys to, no one's listened to it yet. I highly recommend it. But so she wasn't a world-class athlete in herself, and now she's a coach of world-class athletes. And she has on her desk, or she did have anyway, kind of like her reality check was, I make people pass on a bike turning left. That's all I do. To try and get some context. And I
like that.
And in my own personal journey, we'll all get the chance to be at the bedside of someone who passes away. And I would I would take that with both hands every single time, because it's such a privilege, and also it's just a reality check. You're like, oh God, there's something bigger going on here, and that's just my personal experience. I couldn't see it until I saw it, but talking about sacrifice and getting some reality check in our day to day, and there is life outside of our job, and so it kind of last question, and whatever you want, like, so the twin of that question, what is sacrifice, is what is success then for you? And I think I said this before we recorded, paraphrase, it's easy to measure success on success of the athletes we work with, success on the level of job we have or team we're working in, and that's part of the picture. But it's a one-way ticket to another form of suffering. I think a common statement, like I said, was from all the interviews I've done, paraphrased, but I've supported athletes to reach Olympic success or championship success, whatever it is, and I've waited for this emotional rush to hit, and it hasn't come. I thought this is why we do what we do, and it put these coaches are sort of on this spiral of like, why am I doing this? What's going on? I've done everything I possibly can, success-wise, what they thought success-wise, but it's actually not fulfilling, and they end up feeling pretty lost. So, what is your definition of success as you sit here right now?
I think, like you said, I think it's really, really important not to necessarily judge it off your career, or it's got to be more internal than that. And I've definitely had part of my success. I wanted to reach working with these teams and do this. And I think part of that is ego, and part of that is almost a acceptance on that imposter syndrome of, you actually can do your job. And I think that's part of why we reach for these elements. Like, I've enjoyed working with developmental kids in a school just as much as I've enjoyed working with world champion athletes. There's me understanding that now, I think, is really important for me in my career, because that there is no difference. I like the challenge of elite sport, but it doesn't necessarily make me better or worse than anyone else or more successful. I had, again, Spinksy, great line, and it really resonated with me. And he said, I want to make sure I get this right, but success or a good role to him is working with interesting people to solve interesting and complex questions. And I think, and I'm probably butchering it, but it's some to that. It is, I want to do interesting things with interesting people. I want to ask cool questions and do things that challenge and push me to be better, but also in an environment that allows me to be me without judgment and fear and all the other ugly emotions. So yeah, that's probably the key for me. Whether that ends up being different sporting environments or that evolves out, I think that's the cool thing about that line is it doesn't hold back. It has no relation to the job specifics. It's just the concept of doing interesting things and being thought-provoking and challenged and driven. And yeah, it resonated with me really, really strongly, rather than necessarily, I still have little bucket list jobs that I think would be cool and challenge me in different ways, but it's not necessarily, if I don't do that, that's okay. It's not me failing at my career, failing at life. It's just something different, just a challenge that I didn't, you can't do everything. I have an issue with FOMO with roles. I want to literally do every single role in the world. It's a problem, but it's just like, oh, what would that offer me that could be cool, that I could learn? So yeah, just being able to do that in an environment with other people who are interesting and want to learn and try and solve different problems. That's really, yeah, the exciting one for me.
I love that. Interesting things with interesting people that allows me to be me. That kind of resonates deeply. My definition would be, okay, it's obviously changed over the years, but success to me now is a person who stands in their integrity and lives authentically in alignment with their values that allows them to express their natural born talents. Integrity and authenticity was massive to me. I was so out of alignment with that for years. But, great. I have really enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything else you want to say? Don't worry if there isn't.
Oh, no, I think just anyone who's struggling, and I think a lot of us do in different parts of our career, and there's a lot of fear and shame around,
right,
am I going to make it? Am I getting the right jobs? Am I getting fired? All of that. And I think, it's all of that stuff is okay, and reach out to people, reach out to your network, to your friends. I couldn't be where I am without them there. And that's not just in terms of work. Reach out to people who also don't know, the people who like you for you. None of that matters at the end of the day. They just care about you and want you to succeed in however that is defined for you. So, I think we get very caught up in not wanting to discuss our vulnerabilities and our challenges with others, which is why what you're doing is so important and gives people it role models to people what's important, and it's okay to speak out and be vulnerable. Guys typically aren't necessarily taught that when they're younger. It's not okay that's not taught, and should be really encouraged. Reach out to the people you need, and be open and vulnerable with them, and connections will be stronger than ever, and that'll help you.
For sure. Well, Nicolai, thank you so much. And like I said, I really appreciate it. It's been so valuable, and I know many people are gonna get a lot from this. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me on. I love what you're doing, and I think it's going to be super impactful for everyone.
Thank you for listening. And as always, if you liked this episode, if you love Untapped Potential, then please can I ask that you leave a review on Spotify or iTunes. It really helps spread this podcast to practitioners that need it.